Hello, welcome everyone. Episode 4 of Off the Top of My Head podcast. You're here with your host, one and only Jordan. With us on the reg, we have Young. How's it going?
I'm fine, thank you, Jordan.
Great stuff. Luke, how you doing?
I'm fantastic, mate.
Oh, that is a response I want every week. Oh god, right. So we're back. We're still going through genres of games, and before we get into the genre, let's go through this week or what we've been doing since the last episode. So I'll start with Luke. This past week, anything happened that's remotely interesting in your life?
Not really. No. Lockdown. My dog ate a dead bird today twice. That was about it. That was
same bird twice.
Well, he ate it, and then he found like another half of it like further down the road, and he was like, "I'm gonna have this bit too." So I'm kind of waiting for the aftermath for that. Other than that, yeah, it's been pretty basic, to be honest. You know, same old, same old.
It's just the content we want. I love it. Just keep going. It's superb.
Every week.
No, true.
I'll tell you what colour his poo is as well, if you want.
No, don't spoil us. That can be next week, right?
Don't spoil it, honestly. Too much of a true.
Young, anything at all? Anything fun?
You're not going to top it, Young. So don't try.
Well, there's nothing to top it with. I've gone for a walk every day. It's been exciting.
Okay, so insane.
I've been going wild.
Watch this guy.
I'm out of control.
Insane. The only thing that's interesting happened to me is probably getting the vaccine yesterday and 2 days ago, and nearly actually dying yesterday with it. Oh my god.
Was this whole
Fake news.
segment so you can bring up the fact you had the vaccine?
Yeah, completely. We do this every week. What are you on about?
Anyway, I got the vaccine. I don't know anyone else knows.
How have you managed to get the vaccine?
Because there's people in my school, some of the younger groups have been, they're quite vulnerable. There's like just the children themselves, so only the key stage 1 members of staff have had it. So anyone in years 3, 4, and 5 didn't get it, but I have. I'd say luckily, but no, only nursery reception year 1, year 2 got the vaccine, but 3, 4, 5, 6 haven't.
So only the ultra nonsense. Give it to you.
God, not this again.
I won't have had any side effects when I had my vaccine.
But you've had it as well, Young.
Yeah, I haven't got a spleen though. So
okay,
I've got actual medical reason. I'm not just like I don't just hang around children and they're like, right, give him it quickly. Hopefully it'll cure that as well.
Get it. Which one did you guys get?
The AstraZeneca one I got.
I had the Pfizer one, so obviously that must be the Duff one that George got.
Honestly,
I've heard that one gives you a dead arm and makes you feel like shit.
I've heard as well. It's kind of like the older you are, the less symptoms you get, but the younger you are, you get the worst ones. I literally woke up yesterday at about 5 a.m, sweating all over, being sick. It was horrible, backache. It was not fun. I tell you, not good at all. The whole day was an absolute write-off.
TMI.
Yeah, I think I'll take the COVID. That sounds.
I'll take the
COVID. I actually play games, and you're like, I feel so ill, mate. I just can't play games today. Oh, I'm just so.
That's how ill I was. Honestly, It was bad.
Just watching some series in bed instead.
You can't have been that poorly. I saw you online.
It was like about.
It was second lease of life. Watching went to bed, little Judas.
It was like 2 a.m. I was finally playing. Yeah, it took the whole day to recover. I think I had an extra 8 hours sleep yesterday, just in the day.
Part-timer. This is where your furlough money's going, ladies and gentlemen. This is taxpayer money.
Taxpayer money, just to dot around all week because the kids aren't at school.
Oh, God. Anyway, away from bullying Jordan of the week, we've gone to the next bit. Right. So, main topic this week is the genre of RPG games. So, do you know what that stands for? Role-playing game. So, first of all, role-playing game is kind of very different to strategy games and other games we've talked about. You are kind of essentially our main character. You kind of follow the story of that main character in that kind of setting, the universe that the games put yourself in. you kind of get different attributes to your character. You have to follow down a storyline. There's sometimes a side quest to go through, all these types of things. So I've probably mentioned a few already there, but what would you say the main appeal of playing an RPG game would be? Why would you pick it up off the shelf and take it home to play it? Who wants to go in first?
Go on, Jan. Go on, you know you want it.
I don't know. I think it's just that it's one that usually RPG games are way longer than other games. So like a lot of times when RPG games get sold, they get sold on like 40 hours of content or like 50 hours, and I think part of it is that sometimes you just want a game where you're like, okay, I want to sit down and play a game and get invested in it. I don't want to just play like FIFA or something, or one of these games you can just jump on and off. It's just a bit of like a fun game. So I think part of it is that, and then also I think just RPG games usually, I wouldn't say always a fantasy, but that quite often in a certain, like there's a certain genre of RPG games like JRPG games or like fantasy RPG games that are really popular anyway, just because people like the idea of, okay, I get to be this powerful person in a world far away who can do things that humans can't do. It's not based in reality or anything. And also I don't just get it all straight away. It's not just a boring god game where I go and smashing people. It's like I've got to grow, and the more time you invest, the more fun the game becomes, basically. And I think that's what kind of gets a lot of people into it, is they sink a lot of time into an RPG game, the character gets really strong, and then all of a sudden they feel like, oh, this game's really fun now, because I am smashing people, but I had to work to get it. Because there's always like that. I think that's when RPG games like suffer, is if they're a game that's too hard, like the learning curve's too steep, then all of a sudden it gets boring. You've got to get like the difficulty to actual playing time just right with an RPG. Because you want to invest time and not be easy straight away, but then obviously you also don't want to just have people sitting there for like 20 hours before it gets fun, and then you're like, oh, okay, now finally it's good. Okay, good. Just wasted like nearly a day of my life on this.
Oh, a day? Bloody hell, that's not that long compared to some RPGs, but understandable. I know what you mean. Luke, what's the main appeal for yourself? Why would you pick up an RPG game?
Yeah, I think it's similar to what Young said. It's a game where you can obviously customize your approach. A lot of role-playing games allow a good bit of flexibility, whether you want to be like a bruiser, heavy hitter, long range, melee, however you want to play it, you can customize your style. And if you've got a 40-hour, 50-hour game that it's mainly dependent on storyline, that storyline might change ever so slightly when you play it from a different angle. Instead of just being a meathead who walks straight in and gets clumped over the head and is just having a slogging contest, you might want to go to like a spellcaster or a scout or a thief or someone who's a bit more tactical. So I think it's nice that you can customize the approach to the RPG, and also like just going out and finding stuff. So you could just stick to the main quest or storyline, which is maybe 20 hours, but the fact that you can divert away from that and potentially get benefits from it, such as going and finding a really strong bit of armor or like a super cool gun, like a ray gun or something, having those things to help you in the storyline because you did something, it's that whole reward piece that Young mentioned earlier about, if you're willing to put in the hours, getting that bit of reward. So I think it's a good game to get lost into, RPGs. Certainly something that's maybe not as strong as it used to be in the years gone past. I think that it is sort of getting a little less popular, but great to lose yourself in for a weekend or so.
Very nice, yeah. I think I agree with that. I think the main appeal to me, again, is like really giving yourself a bit of freedom to how you want to progress through the RPG, and also the choice as well, the choice access of like, do you want to play on like a bruiser or kind of like a melee class, or do you want to go and maybe play an RPG that's more like gun focused instead? There's so many different routes, and even in those kind of games, even though you've specifically chosen maybe like a sci-fi kind of universe, there's still then a lot more customizable things you can do inside that one game. Maybe sometimes there is kind of one linear like main storyline, but there's also so many different like side quests to go in and out of as well, which are quite cool. Nice. So what about the learning curve? We picked up on this last time of strategy games. Sometimes it's quite easy to start with and then like hard to get through. What's kind of the learning curve of an RPG game? I'm going to kind of start and say, I think at the start, it's very much you kind of pick things up as you go. If it's the first kind of RPG, even the first time you've played that specific game. And I always kind of think the learning curve it's very friendly because it wants you to get into the story and go for it. But then I think with some of the, maybe your second or third time playthroughs are always going to be a lot better. You might know that this is the best way to defeat this part. I know that this class is better suited to deal with this, for example. What are your thoughts? What's kind of the learning curve of the RPG games?
Oh, I think the learning curve on RPGs isn't too steep. I think it's probably quite a shallow curve. They like to, in most cases, sort of drip feed you stuff over time. You might start with a spell or a move, and then 10 hours later you may unlock something else that you couldn't once do before, a certain skill like, I don't know, climbing up a wall and flipping over the top of it and unlocking more areas of the game. So I think they drip feed you the learning curve quite easily, but definitely when you talk about replayability, RPGs, especially on the first run through, you probably choose the easiest route because you want to get familiar with the game, you want to know the storyline. But you definitely need to just sort of go back and play it again, and like I say, try a different role instead of going for the easy slogger. Maybe you want to go for a different approach, and actually all of a sudden that RPG game is looked at in a much different way. So I think the learning curves are really important to capture the player.
Very nice, very nice. Young?
Yeah, no, I do agree. I think there are kind of odd games where, I mean, I'm thinking this in my head, and I can't actually think of any of the games off the top of my head either. But I'm sure, I suppose things like Dark Souls and stuff like that. There are games that are kind of technically RPGs like that, where you build your character up, you're growing, you get more gear, you're doing all these kind of things, but are like incredibly hard. And that was like what it became popular for. So I think you are right that because it's so common that it's like it's a gradual curve and it goes up and up, and the difficulty gets higher. But by the time the difficulty gets higher, you've kind of played it enough that like they've taught you enough along the way that it's like, oh, it's just a bit more tough now. It's not actually like, oh my god, I can't do this. What the hell's going on? It's just like, oh, it's the end game now. Like it's the end of the thing. The enemies are a bit harder, that kind of thing. Whereas something, I think that's what like Dark Souls and did so well when it first came, or it was called Demon Souls, I think, the first one. But yeah, like when that came out, that's why it did so, because people were like, oh my god, it's an RPG game, but it's so hard. Like you get 3 shot or something, just whatever happens. It doesn't matter what point in the game you're at. Like until you get to the end of the game, it doesn't matter like what point in the game you are, you're always under threat, and that became like why that was fun. So I do think there is always going to be a market for an ultra hard RPG game like that because it's so uncommon. But I just think that at the same time as that, Sekiro Shadows Die Twice as well. That was like one that came out before that was the same thing. People were saying it was super hard. But they even had to put in, that was where they had all that controversy, because they put in an easy mode where you could just basically go through the game and do the story, because it was like a story-driven game as well. And people go mad, going like, oh, you shouldn't be able to just get to the end of the game without doing anything. It's just like, whatever. Yeah. But yeah, like, and I think that just shows like there is definitely a market for it. If you're willing to make a really good RPG game that is just really tough, but fair, like it's got to still be fair, then people will flock to it. But in general, RPGs are a bit easier. The learning curve's a bit steadier, and I think that's one of the reasons why I play. You can just sink hours and hours into them because it's easy to get into. It's just like, okay, well, this is how the systems work. This is what you do. This is like how you play the game day to day.
Yeah,
very nice. I think I haven't put this down, but I just made me think. In terms of the learning curve, obviously it invites you in, it teaches you how to do the mechanics of the game that it wants you to do, and there's like other stuff surrounding that as well. How much of that do you ever think that maybe you wish they didn't tell you and you kind of like picked it up yourself? So maybe sometimes you didn't choose a certain class for a specific reason because you thought it wasn't strong, or you didn't choose a specific combo of like team in like an RPG because maybe you didn't put points into a certain attribute because you thought, oh, well, it's recommended me that I just put them in strength instead of like charisma, for example, in like KOTOR, when you think like, oh, I'm going to soldier roll, I'm just going to do this. Do you ever think they kind of expect you for a bit of replayability to kind of like, oh, next time I'm going to play this, I'm going to choose maybe more of like a scout role with like traps and such instead of just like a front line? Like, is that what you kind of think might happen a lot with it as well? With the learning curve, they kind of like put you on a kind of, yeah, we recommend this kind of, this is how you should play the game if you want to have like your easiest time.
Yeah, I think a lot of them, the RPGs do sort of say that nowadays. They recommend for sort of first time players maybe just go down the hack and slash route, but for someone who's got a bit more know-how or has played the game before, there's alternate ways to play it. So like you say, a spellcaster or a thief or a scout or a scoundrel or whatever you want to call that specific type of character. I do think that is more geared towards a second time playthrough than it is a first time playthrough, purely because you just don't know what you're trying to do. You just think, okay, I'll go hit this person over the head. Well, actually, you can't do shit with that. You might need to go cast a spell first before you can do it well.
True. Yeah, I understand. Fair enough. They kind of want to ease you into it, though, and they're with the kind of easier class, probably. Yeah, nice. Main thing about RPG game, which I think that people aren't drawn to play these for these reasons, but it's always a part of RPGs. The side quests. So RPGs are kind of centered around one main quest. You can't go to part 2 until you complete part 1. As you go through the different parts, you understand each part of the story. And if you carried on through maybe the main quest, you might maybe take you 10 hours in a game. But like side quests are kind of a big factor now. Sometimes they take you additional 10 hours. Maybe it takes you another 10 hours to complete the side quest. So why is side quests like important to us in like RPGs, would you say? Why are they a good thing, or maybe sometimes why are they not such a good thing?
Second, maybe not such a good thing. I think no, I think side quests are like obviously a massive part of RPG games, just because there's some RPG games now have even been criticised that they make the EXP almost expecting you to do all the side quests. Like, okay, you're not going to be as strong at each level, at each part of the story unless you go through all the side quests. And then other games do it the opposite way, where they give you an absolute ton for the main story quest, with the idea of basically, well, if you don't want to do any of the side quests, that's fine. You'll just get boosted through when you go through the story. I mean, I'm just like terrible for it when I play RPGs. Like, the reason I never finish them is because I try and do every single side quest the first time through. I can't help. I don't know what it is, but when I put the map up and there's like a quest mark or something, I'm just like, I've got to go there. So even if I'm sitting there thinking, and there's times when I do, I just think I've got to go. Like, I don't even think to myself, oh yeah, I'll go and do that. I'm just like, I'm gonna have to go do that. Yeah, like, for God's sake, all I wanted to do was go over this way and do this thing, but I'm just gonna have to go and do this. Like, it doesn't make any sense to go and do that quest to come back to do it. I'll just do it now, get out of the way. And
that leaves you down some like 7-part quest line for a side quest somewhere else, and that's another 3 hours gone.
That's why like games like The Witcher, which is like one of probably my favourite RPG ever. That's why that was so good. Is that the side quests on it was so detailed for just side quests. Because everybody knows you've kind of got to do side quests in an RPG. Everybody, even if you don't do all the side quests, everybody kind of understands. All right, I might do like a few of them just to get a bit of extra gear or a bit more like of a boost to my level. But in The Witcher, they made them so like much more just interesting than just like, oh, this is boring fetch quest and this is you got to go kill this guy and stuff. It was like everything was a bit more to them. I thought it was good.
I did like some of the side quests in The Witcher actually, because you had to like. Maybe someone lost someone. I think when was the one with the werewolf when I first tried to kill that guy? You had to try and find someone was like, oh, my partner's been talking to this woman somewhere. So you go and find and follow some tracks. You got to do like a scent, and then you've got to like find out where they are. Then you find a cabin in the woods. Then you find a dead body, and then you come back and find, oh, well, they've actually been out. That's my sister. Like, oh shit. Then you go all the way back to there. Then there's like a cave underneath, and then you fight the werewolf, and then you realise afterwards that he's actually related to. And it's kind of like it's really detailed. The side quests are. I remember that. It's really really good. And you finish that side quest, and you're like, bloody hell, have I just finished the main game? That was pretty in-depth. I know everyone's character's name. I know his dead brother from last week as well. It's just incredible. Yeah. But now I know what you mean for The Witcher. And that's another thing you mentioned. When you kind of see that kind of like quest line on the edge of your map, you're like, I'll just take a quick detour. And for me, I think it's really bad when I play it, because I get to a point where I'm like, right, there must be a really good point of when I play this game, there must be the most efficient way that I can do this quest. And then if I do this quest, that'll lead me to this one. And then I end up spending half the time online looking for a guide where to start, what quests I should do in each order, where I should do this, where I should hand in that. And it's just, sometimes it becomes more of a chore than playing the game, but I still enjoy it. It's very odd.
Ugh. You're just trying to get 100%.
Well, not even trying to get 100%, just trying to be like, oh, you should definitely do... Because sometimes they'll give you a quest that's too hard for what you're doing, but then you can't do it until you've done the ones before. It's like, I don't know.
I thought you meant you were just trying to get like 100%. I didn't realise you literally meant like, even though I've bought the game to play, I want to finish it as quickly as possible. No questions asked. I don't want to experience anything. Just give me the quickest physical way to finish this game.
It wasn't 100% run. It was just more of like like if I wanted to do like a nice path and not kind of like retrace my steps 7 times, like, oh, pick up this quest here, do this part, then go do this part, then come back here and do that. I had like a notebook out on my other screen thinking, like, yeah, I've done this one, or I've got to go and find this. And I never thought of it. I don't know that, but that's what I play when I do RPGs. It's strange. I know it draws me in too much. Oh,
we've all been there, chasing that elusive 100%. That's what it is for me. It's chasing.
But
that 100%.
But I never did it to get 100%. I just did it because I wanted to be like efficient when I played around. And
it's still blow my mind. I agree with Luke. If you were doing it for 100%, I'd understand. I'd be like, oh, fair enough. You want it 100%, you know, that's up to you. But you're actually like, no, I didn't want 100%. I just want someone to tell me how to play the game.
I don't. I know it was bad. All right. Oh God. Moving swiftly on from that. So, I think this is probably one of my biggest factors to playing an RPG, and that is kind of the storyline behind the game. How much would a good story draw you into playing the actual game itself? How much is that? Not the combat, not the mechanics, not the side quests, not the DLC that they add on. Like, how much is just the mainline story? If you had it like a film, how much does that draw you to the game?
I think it's got to be the most important. I think if I think about my favorite RPGs, it's driven by the storyline. There's a fantastic storyline that, and actually my two favorites, the storylines are very similar. You can draw a lot of similarities between the two, but the combat in them both isn't fantastic. So for reference, it's Mass Effect and Knights of the Old Republic, two of my favorite RPGs. The combat's a bit clunky on them both, slightly different. One of them's got sort of a more of a turn-based combat system, and the other one's kind of a clunky FPS, but because the story's so good, you learn to live with it and you learn to just get on with it. And for me, it's got to be probably the most important factor for drawing you in. Once you're drawn into that universe, that world, then you can start playing into the side quests and the replayability because you're falling in love with the story. So for me, it's got to be the most important thing, I think.
Young, is that the same for you as well?
Yeah, no, definitely. Like I've been, Mass Effect's great game. I think I love the first probably RPG I really, really enjoyed was Oblivion, and that's kind of a similar thing where like on my 360 I got it, and it was just like I like the fact because in that what I actually liked about that as an RPG is the story was great, but you weren't like the main character. Like it was like the first RPG I played where you weren't the main character turns out being like Martin Septus or whatever it's called, Septus.
I never finished it.
He's like the Emperor's. He's the Emperor's son. It's like you start off the game, you're like, oh, I must be really special because like the Emperor's telling me I'm special, and then it turns out like you're special because you're my son's bodyguard, and it's not even my real son, it's my illegitimate son, the only one who's not dead. Like, okay, great, and like that's but like the story's great because of that, because you go through it like almost watching the story even as your character, so like it's easier to get into the whole role playing part of it. I think where you do feel like, oh, well, he doesn't have a clue what's going on. The character I'm playing doesn't have a clue what's going on. And I don't have a clue what's going on because I thought I'd be like the big man and all be this, that, and the other. And they're like, oh no, yeah, he's like the main guy. You've just got to protect him, sort of thing. Like you're going to do all these, try and work out what's going on with his history, basically.
Young think he's the big man. Nothing changed.
Yeah. But I mean, even stories when you are the main character and stuff like Mass Effect, where you are playing like Shepard or whatever. As long as the stories don't mean Mass Effect, people hated like the last Mass Effect ending and all this and stuff. But I still thought like it's hard to end something that's been that good for that long. Like they spent all three of those games. The story was so good, and it was like, it's almost a bit like the Matrix. I think like the first two Matrixes were great, and then the third one's like, yeah, it's not actually the worst film ever made, but people just are disappointed because the first two were like, oh my god. And it's the same with Mass Effect. I think like Mass Effect 1 and 2, people played them were like, oh, these are incredible. This is such a good game. Like, this is such a good story. This is this, that, and the other. And then the last one came out, and it was like, well, it was still a really good game. It was probably actually the best game out of all three of them, funnily enough, like in terms of what like the systems and like how it played and everything. It's just people didn't like the ending, so they were like, well, it sucks. It's like, well, that's not really fair. I think, like, if you, I don't know.
I think Mass Effect suffered from the Game of Thrones problem, where you've got this concept, this storyline, which in its naivety, no one really thought much of it, didn't know much of it. They played it, it got a reputation, and all of a sudden, the storyline, you start getting excited with your own imagination as to where you think it's going, and you start painting your own picture in terms of what you want it to look like in the finale, and then you get to the finale, and it's someone else's vision of it, and you're thinking, well, mine was so much better. Why was it not like mine? I could have done that. And then you times that by 10 million people, however many people have played the game or watched the series, and that's why it gets such bad feedback, is because you're thinking, well, you had all of these avenues that you could have done, and you've kind of gone with maybe not the worst one, but maybe just not one as good as your thought. So they're trying to live up to everyone's expectations, and everyone's expectations are so vastly different that you can't please everybody. And they've tried to sort of please as many as they can, and in doing so, made a very average game. But like you say, on its own would be a good game, but the expectation was there for it to be one of the best. Same with Game of Thrones.
Saying that everyone's different expectations, then, do you think there's someone out there that finished that last Mass Effect and was like, "Oh my god, incredible, best ending ever"? Do you reckon there's someone who actually thought that when it finished?
No,
no. I got to the end, and because I'd read all this stuff online about how it was the worst ending ever, and I got to the end and I saw it, and I was like, it wasn't a great ending. I'm not going to sit here and say it was a good ending, like, oh, I really enjoyed it. But because I'd seen like people absolutely slating, like, I can't eleave this how it ended. I got to it and I was like, it was alright. It was just a bit weird. Like, it just turned a bit like Matrixy. Like, it literally did turn into basically what happens at the end of the Matrix. Like, one of the choices is the same thing. So it's like, okay, whatever. I just kind of went, oh, fine. Well, it is what it is. I still enjoyed, like, that's my point. I still enjoyed 90% of Mass Effect 3. It was just the ending which I really didn't enjoy. Up to that point, I was like, "Oh, this is a really good game. I'm really enjoying the the skill trees. I'm enjoying playing the way I've chosen to play, everything like that." And then I just got to the ending and was like, "Oh." Like the Mordin quest line when he dies and shit like that was all really good. And like there was a bunch of still really good moments in that game. It's just the ending kind of was like let it down.
It's kind of like Sorry, carry on. Oh, okay. It kind of sounds like, even with like Game of Thrones, these games series seem so good that you build such high expectations of them that they have to deliver. And if they don't deliver to the best possible way, then you're just not like happy with it, which is kind of suffering from success, it seems.
Yeah, it's exactly that. It's exactly that. It's suffering from its own success, and I think it impacts the replayability, what we touched on earlier. If you've got something with a bad ending, I'm not going to go back and play I don't think I have even gone back and played Mass Effect 3 in a different class. Whereas Mass Effect 1, Mass Effect 2, I was playing a biotic, I was playing a tech, I was playing a soldier, I was playing a hybrid. I went and did a playthrough on every possible way. I went and made sure I did every possible side quest and every possible ending. On the third one, I was like, do you know what? I'll just Google it. I'll just Google how the ending plays out, because I'm not that happy with how it plays out. And yes, it's a good game, but actually, I'd rather go play the second one again, if I'm honest. And it's the same with Game of Thrones. You know, nobody's ever rewatched season 8 because of that very reason. It's kind of a tick box now, and you're like, oh, actually, I know how they've done it, and I'm not that fussed by it, to be honest. So I'm not going to rewatch it.
Fair play. I love the talking about storyline. Just get straight into Mass Effect. Oh, we'll talk more later on. I'm sure. Yeah, I think myself, storyline is definitely one of the biggest things for me. Definitely in RPGs. I think one of my all-time favorite RPGs is like really heavily storyline based, of like Final Fantasy VII, like the original one. And even then, like the playthrough of that, sometimes the storyline doesn't even give enough. It doesn't even give enough itself in the game. You've got to even like go outside and like research about like what's actually happened about it, where the characters come from, and there's so much detail in it as well that sometimes the gameplay in the game there is just as a bonus. It's kind of like got so much behind it that the storyline kind of drags it so much that that's the main point of playing those kind of games, because it's so deep with all the characters and that. So yeah, storyline's definitely the number one reason why I'd think you'd play an RPG game. So, is there anything in an RPG game, or is there any franchise that you think hasn't jumped on and thought, you know what, why haven't they made one yet for an RPG game that hasn't been done? Anything that hasn't been added or you think could be improved or made?
I think Game of Thrones, just by coincidence, they've not really. I don't know whether it's because of the bad feedback from season 8, or they've had 10 years to do this, but I can't think of a good RPG that they've really chucked a lot of money at, given the amount of revenue they must have made from that franchise. It just seems like a no-brainer. I mean, you could maybe argue the same with Lord of the Rings. It's not had a fantastic RPG made, but I think they've taken a stab a few times.
Star Wars?
Not landed it well.
Star Wars have got KOTOR.
It's had KOTOR, but that was years ago now. Like,
but that's only because EA held the rights, so they did give everyone else.
I know, yeah, but Fallen Order is a pretty good game, don't get me wrong. But that's what, like, if you think about the size of Star Wars and Lord of the Rings to a degree, you're right, Lord of the Rings, they're the same kind of thing. But you think how big they are, how many people love them. Harry Potter as well. That's one that I always think. Like, as much as I'm like. I did used to really like Harry Potter. Okay, it's not as big as it used to be, but like, how did they never have like a big RPG game for Harry Potter? At that one point, it was mental. Everybody loved Harry Potter. It was all that was being talked about. And like you say, for some reason, these big like film games, big films, they never seem to translate properly over to games, and you never seem to have a good film adaptation game. And I think a lot of that's because they just try and shoehorn whatever the big new popular thing is into it. So like Fallen Order was good because they just said, okay, you go and make whatever game you want. So they went and made like a Dark Soulsy Star Wars game, and that was pretty cool. But like sometimes they'll just go, okay, let's just do this. Let's make a mobile game. Let's make this. They don't put the money to the right places. They just kind of try and get the quick dollar.
I think it's licenses as well. Well, I know it's licenses for Lord of the Rings. That they're not going to release the license to make those games, and not only the games, but I think there's a license required for the movies version of the book as well. So not only are you paying the Tolkien family for the license for Lord of the Rings, but you're also paying Peter Jackson and THX the license for the Lord of the Rings adaptation in the movie, because that's what you're going to try and make it seem like. So I think there are restrictions on franchise because of licensing, because of cost, and then to then lump that on top of what is going to be a huge game, because most good RPGs are pretty fantastically open world. There's a lot of money to go into it, but that's not saying they're not going to make you money. I think for me, any big franchise should have a decent RPG sat behind it. Like I say, KOTOR, fantastic, one of my favorites, but that was 3,500 years before Luke Skywalker. Why have you not done another one since? It makes no sense.
Yeah, there's so, I think with how much like people have put into RPG games now, with how much backing behind it, with, as you said, with big franchises, it's just another money pot that people, you've got to invest in to pay the royalties for it, but you can see from the previous games, like, it's going to be worth it. You're going to get paid back for it, and everyone's going to play it. You just got to put the time in to make it good.
I think it does depend, though. I'm sorry.
Go on, Jan. Sorry, mate.
I was just going to say, I think the one thing I would say is that there was a game, Kingdom of Amalur. I don't know if anyone played that. But that was I really, really liked that game. It was a great RPG game that came out in like 2008 or something. That was a company. I can't remember who started it, but a guy basically got a bunch of grants and started this company up to make this game, and they just didn't make enough money from it, basically, and it folded. And that was a great RPG game. And I think that is one of the things that RPGs can suffer from, is as much as there is potential to make a lot of money from it, it's still quite a flooded market. Like, it's a genre that's been around for a long time. So even something like that came out, okay, it'd obviously be different if it was like Kingdoms of Star Wars or something. Like if it had a big IP behind it, it would not have suffered. It would have been like really well received because it was a good game. But I do think that what stops a lot of these companies making it is they rather than looking at it and going, well, actually, that didn't suffer because it was a bad game. That suffered because nobody knew what Kingdoms of Amalur was, and it was just a random thing. And like it actually got more hype after the game was dead, and they said, "Oh yeah, we've got to close." People bought all the expansions and stuff, and like they were saying, "Oh, thanks, this is paying off our debts." It's like, but what people are like actively buying this stuff now, knowing there won't be another one. But I think companies do, like big companies, especially when it's at like EA and stuff for Star Wars, they're looking good. Oh, that just proves what we're saying. There's no point in making one of those. Like, it'll just go bankrupt. Like, they don't make enough money, sort of thing, and don't look at it and go, actually, like, that's because it didn't have a big IP. If it was Star Wars, that would have absolutely raked it in, sort of thing.
Yeah, true. We've got a few people in the chat mentioning from series links. So, Breaking Bad, everyone watch that, or Dexter? What about that as an RPG, or is that kind of? I mean, it's got the storyline behind it with all the seasons and that. Like, how much could you do with that? Do you reckon?
I think it would be. I mean, just speaking from Breaking Bad, I haven't seen Dexter, but Breaking Bad is becoming a drug cartel. It's becoming, a big drug dealer at the end of the day. So it's a slightly different take on an RPG. You're not going to go around, beating someone to death and then looting their body for an eighth of weed or something. It's more about maybe. I mean, you could do that. That's not an awful idea. I know, when the GTA San Andreas, you had the gang wars. I loved that part of the game. But it's probably more about the business acumen that sits behind it. So I think, yes, you could do a Breaking Bad RPG, and I'd be really interested to see how it plays out, because it could either be really exciting, and actually I think a lot of people would want to do that, just merely purely because it's quite taboo being a drug dealer, but also it could just fall flat on its face because it's not got the hack and slash of a typical RPG.
True. Fair enough. I think, I think you mentioned quite a few points there. It's kind of, I think it's good that it's got the story behind it, but yeah, it needs to be a bit more. I think that's very much, if it's going with the series and it's kind of like a bit realistic, it's kind of just very narrow. That's what's going to happen with the main line. There's not really too many kind of side quests you could split apart from. I guess from like kind of in the series going to have a bit of a spin-offs with like some different characters and that. But yeah, I guess you could. But again, are people going to play it? And I think you mentioned as well with why aren't people taking the opportunity to make these kind of games? Like the second the next Skyrim comes out, like every other RPG probably gets forgotten about for the next like few years because that game came out, was it like over 10 years ago now, Skyrim? And it's still being modded, it's still being played, the replayability is there, it's got everything behind it. It's such a massive company that I wouldn't say that the market's flooded for them, but there's just such... These companies realise that this game's so good and they've got such a good backing that when they make a game to that quality, then every other game doesn't seem bad, but it's just like, it's done well, so you're going to just always approve of it and always play it. So people that are trying to like catch up to that, you're just playing a losing game because you're probably never going to get there unless you sink double the amount of time and effort that they do, which probably is even more difficult.
Yeah, I think you're right there that people don't appreciate how many hours you can lose in a good RPG. Like you say, Skyrim, Red Dead, people play these games for hundreds, if not thousands of hours when they really get it down, and then they start modding it, and then they do side quests and walkthroughs, different difficulties, different play styles. So you're almost again a victim of your own success because you don't want to then release a game like FIFA every year when you've still got someone playing, Oblivion from fucking 10 years ago. So you've kind of got to drip feed the games out at the right time, and I think that's really difficult to one, create really good, interesting storylines without sort of taking away from a franchise like a Lord of the Rings. If you did an RPG, you know what happens at the end of it. You've got to try and create another story within the story at the same time while sort of keeping people intrigued as well. So it's a really challenging juggle, that sort of stuff.
It is a tough one, very true. I mean, to show that it's been out 10 years and still played now, that just shows how much effort and time they've put in it to make it that good. Right then, on to, I think, part of each episode, which is we've made a list of some memorable RPG games that we've played ourselves. We're going to talk through them now and any memories that come back, some mechanics in the game, and we'll just get to it. So, here we go. First one I've got is, do we want to talk about Skyrim and Oblivion together, or do we want to put them separate?
I think Oblivion's better than Skyrim. So
I think Oblivion's better than Skyrim.
You see, I don't know what it is with me, but I tried to play some scary game recently, and I was terrified of it. Don't worry, we'll get there. And I didn't like playing it at all. And I got to Oblivion, and I was like, yeah, this game's good. I like this. It's going really well. And I did that, that quest where like you if you go and find out the main gladiator's heritage, he's like a vampire, and then like you can become like the best one. I did that. Yep. That was really cool. I was like, yeah, this is great. Anyway, I wasn't doing the main storyline. Got to the main storyline. It was like, right, all these portals are appearing now, all of these big cities. Can you go and sort it out? I'm like, yeah, it's going fine. I didn't know how you meant to sleep to level up. Probably level 2 still, chilling. Literally, you walk into the portal with about 4 enemies, and I'm like, no, 4 of your own guys, and I'm like, oh, there's me and the boys. This will be a right laugh. I walk in there. All 4 of them get headbutted by this half dinosaur thing, die instantly. I walk out that portal and never play the game again because I'm terrified. Honestly, it was terrifying. The whole screen changed. It's on fire. All my friends are dying. I have no idea what's going on. Honestly, I never played a game again after that. It was, oh god, yeah. That's my experience with Oblivion anyway.
I mean, that's just a question of cojones and whether you got them or not. I mean.
There did used to be a strat where you purposely wouldn't level up. You wouldn't go to sleep. So I think when your stats would level up on their own, there'd be caps they could hit, but which would go up when you leveled up. But they'd hit them on your own. I think if you didn't level up, there was some. I remember reading it somewhere like the caps would go up way higher, way quicker because it tried and compensate for how much you've been playing or something stupid.
Oh yeah,
so I was going to say doing a pro strat.
I played it for a bit and thought I was having a great time, and then everything just... I think I leveled up randomly when I slept and was like, oh, I must be really strong now. Didn't realise that everyone else leveled up at the same time, and I was just... My God, I was just being flicked around.
When you sleep and you're a vampire in Oblivion, though, if you don't sleep for the first night, you get a good amount of bonuses, and you get a really good spell, which means you can see living things through walls. But if you sleep once, then you become weak to daylight, and you probably did that. You walked into Oblivion where it's not only daylight but burning skies, and you probably just
I was terrible.
Crying.
There was like the Brotherhood thing as well, when you go to bed and you wake up and someone's tried to kill you in your sleep. That was absolutely terrifying as well.
That's if you
amazing.
That is.
That
blew my mind the first time it happened. I didn't realise I'd murdered anyone the first time, and then I went to sleep and they were like, "So you've murdered someone?" I was like, "What the hell? I don't think I murdered anyone."
Who are you? Are you in my bedroom?
Do you know what? I know exactly what happened. What happened was it was after the Gladiator quest, because technically we're in Oblivion. That counted as a murder, because if you get to the end of the quest and tell him he's a vampire,
he doesn't fight you.
He says, "Just kill me." He doesn't fight you back. He just goes, "Just kill me." So if you kill him, then I didn't realise this, and it just counts as murder. So I did that, leveled up, and was like, "Oh, I'm gonna go level up anyway." Leveled up, and I was like, "What the?" Popped up on me.
Oh god, yeah. Well, okay, there's Oblivion. That's what I've played of it.
I think,
sorry, Luke.
I think on Oblivion, one of the things that always stood out for me on that game was that I really appreciated was the fact that you've got Fighters Guild, Mages Guild, Brotherhood. That you, depending on how you like to play, there was a guild with a whole, not even a side quest, like a side campaign of missions that you could go and finish. So if you were a hack and slash guy, go join the Fighters Guild or go to the Gladiators Ring and, you know, have a whale of a time. But if you like spells, Mages Guild, or if you want to be sneaky, go join the Brotherhood. So I've really liked that they almost had an homage for how you like to play, and the fact that you could start your own real estate property in that game as well. Blew my mind. Love that game.
Was the Brother Knight Guild where you went to a random village that was run down and you go in from a door and you go like underground and then it's just
That's
the Dark Brotherhood.
That was one. Yeah.
That's the one reason I didn't like Skyrim, is I felt like I went into Skyrim thinking, oh great, they're going to make like 4 new factions or 4 things something different, and it was just like the Fighters Guild but in Skyrim, and it's the Mages Guild but in Skyrim. It's like, okay, I've just played like 70 hours of this, man. I don't know if you realise, but there was 2 expansions. I played both of them. I don't know what to tell you. Like, I know what's going on.
And I remember in I don't know if you could do it in Oblivion, but in Skyrim you could become a werewolf, but in Oblivion you became a vampire. I'm not sure if you could do the other two in the other 2 games, but yeah, I did feel that Skyrim was a bit of a cop out. Okay, you've got the dragon shout and all that sort of stuff, and instead of like a random Oblivion gate popping up, a random dragon would drop next to you. Like, that was really the only difference. And I once got killed because I accidentally hit someone's chicken once, and they lose their mind for that shit, man. Don't go touching chickens in Skyrim. That's my one thing. So but yeah, I mean, for me it's Oblivion.
Fair play. I think my favourite thing in Skyrim as well was when you think you got your shit together and then you're like, do you know what? This troll, I could do him. He swings that club and you've flown half. You've probably discovered half the map because you've flown half the map by getting hit once. I think I've seen as well. If you try to fight a dragon and you lead it to one of the trolls and the troll engages it, he literally one-shots it. He like smacks the dragon and it was great. Teaming up.
Bring a mammoth into the party as well.
The first time that ever happened to me when I was playing Skyrim, I actually was shocked because I knew the ragdoll physics worked when you died in like combat, but usually, obviously, then you're falling from standing up to like on the ground and you're like, oh, whatever, I died. I was just like sitting there, and then all next thing you know, I was like, oh, I'm ragdolling in the air. Oh, I'm 20 feet up. I'm dead.
Oh, 20 feet up. You must have hit pretty lightly. I was like, I hit the top of the bloody graphics. I did. Just stood there for a while. Oh god, right. Moving swiftly on. I'll put these all together. RPG, Final Fantasy series. Any of you guys plays any of those before? Final Fantasy games?
I played that one that you let me when we were in secondary school. That Lightning, the first
12.
Lightning one.
Yeah.
And I just was like, whatever, man. This just takes too long to get into. This is just so long. Like the entire game, it wasn't an actual RPG until about 20 hours, and it was like a linear corridor chaser for literally like the first 15-20 hours, and then all of a sudden it's like, now we're in Grand something, and I was like, oh what, so now it's open world all of a sudden? Like, what the hell, this game just makes no sense. Stop playing it. But
if you want to play a long-winded game,
I was going to say to you, when you were talking about Final Fantasy before, if you'd played the new Final Fantasy 7 because they remade it, you were talking about the story and they changed the story in it.
Yeah, I think what people I don't know if it was came across clear, but it was a remake in terms of they remade the game to do different things. It wasn't.
He remade the story. Didn't
Yeah,
it wasn't like there. You know, like it's a remake. Like it's the same characters, but everything's new.
It was where like the quests weren't the same. Like the characters were there, but like it wasn't a complete replayability of the first original game on like PS1, I think, when it first came out. So people were a bit upset about that. But whoever's waited since like PS1 to play Final Fantasy 7 again for those graphics, they were happy with what they got, I think. But no, I think RPG games taken to the utmost limit, like I think Final Fantasy's up there with how much like detail and story they try and put into a lot of their games, how much background, especially when they're on like I think 14 or 15 is like the MMORPG version at the moment, and like a lot of ones before those, they're all their own individual like universes, different characters, different antagonists, protagonists. There's so much like depth behind all of them. It's insane. Sometimes they've got familiar things with like the mana, like the different classes they've got and the different combat systems they'll probably use in similar games. But in terms of storyline, they do go very, very heavy in how much is in the game and how long it takes. So I'm quite a fan of those. If you've got about 3 years to sink into some of them, because you need to get there. But yeah. Moving on, Young, The Witcher, thoughts? Any?
It's a bit of a spicy one. Yeah, I mean, it's probably the best RPG I've ever played. I think it's it's just got like everything in it really. There's a pretty decent like crafting system. You can craft. You go and collect like there's recipes around the world. You collect the recipes, the specific gears that for different play styles, different Witcher skulls, and you can craft the armors for them, and then you upgrade the armors. There's an alchemy system in there, so you can create potions from different things you find, and then just like the game itself, like the actual gameplay itself is just. It's not like something, say, like God of War came out a couple of years ago on the PlayStation. That was more of like an action RPG where you upgraded skills and stuff, but more it was about like doing combos and things. The combat system in The Witcher, I wouldn't say is like the most advanced thing in the world. Like you get strong attacks, slow, fast attacks. You can like parry, and then you do like signs, which is like magic. But everything is all like there's not like you're not like pausing the game to do stuff. Like the game slightly slows down when you're casting spells if you're selecting them. That's about it. It's more about like prep your potions, put them on your weapons and stuff, put it on your armor, your oils and stuff. It's more about that aspect, and so I think the combat it's nothing like groundbreaking, but it's good. It's just good. But like where The Witcher kind of becomes the best game like RPG I've ever played is just the story. Like you were talking earlier about obviously playing a story and then going to the side quest and do the next one. Like pretty much every side quest in The Witcher's got like a great little story around it. You'll find individual villages which have their own stories, whereas like so it doesn't feel like you're walking in and just do a ticking quest off a thing. It's like you go in and like, okay, what's going on in this village? Oh, what's going on in this village? And then obviously in the big cities you have a lot of the main quests go into each of the big cities, and then you've got the individual stories within those big cities as well. And it's just there's so much detail put into it. I mean, I got Cyberpunk for Christmas and I've installed it and still not played it because I don't want to be disappointed for life. Like that was like that. I thought that was going to be the next thing. I don't know. Like I was so excited for it because I thought it was just going to be the same again, but just a slightly different thing. It's futuristic. It was like I don't know how they can make one game so bad and one game that's so good because honestly, The Witcher was just brilliant. I just loved all of it. The story was just fantastic.
I really like The Witcher, how like you can't just waltz into a quest and go through it with what you already know from a previous thing to defeat a boss. I think when you had to try and kill like a certain enemy, you had to kind of like learn the enemy, understand its weakness, go and gather something, use a specific rune, fight it in a specific place, use the different, was it like a silver sword instead of like an iron one instead? Like I love those kind of things. Like really you have to like, I think when I mentioned before killing that like werewolf guy, I think I did it 3 times, died loads, and I was like, why am I dying? I actually went and like researched it a bit and was like, oh, I need to use this rune instead, make sure that I use this so it doesn't regenerate. So like I quite like that detail in it as well, trying to like go back to understand how to defeat certain bosses and such. Yeah. Right then, moving on. Luke, I think we've only got a bit, we don't want to spend too long, mate, but we're talking about Mass Effect next. Anything you want to say about that as an RPG?
Fucking amazing. It's one of the best RPGs out there.
And again, like I think bringing it back to it, Young said Witcher storyline great. Luke again storyline Mass Effect. Is that why you play it? Is that why it's good?
Storyline in Mass Effect, I think for me personally, is the best storyline I've run into in a game. The fact that it came out of absolute nowhere, it was just one of these games that I got it for free with my Xbox 360, and I just thought, I played Need for Speed Most Wanted, and I played Halo 3, and I was like, I'm done with them now.
You played Halo 3, you didn't like the story? Hold on. Did you play it right?
I played Halo 3, completed it. I got Need for Speed Most Wanted, completed it, and I was like, I don't want to go buy a new game just yet, or I don't think a new game has been released. I'll open the wrapper on this Mass Effect game and see what it's about. And lo and behold, I stumbled into this game, which was just phenomenal. And then when the second one came out, it just built on the things that were great and made them amazing. For me, Mass Effect, the reason it's good and the reason I like KOTORs and Game of Thrones, even again, I keep referring back to this, is you can change your experience based on your side quests. So in Mass Effect 2, if you go and do a side quest and get a part for your ship, then one of your physical characters of your team won't die when you do the final mission, which means you can use them in the final mission. Whereas if you don't do that side quest, they die, gone, finito. You ain't touching them. You've just lost one of the coolest people in your team. And it's like, shit, that's the whole purpose of side quests. Not only does it give me a nice gun or a nice bit of armor, some of the side quests in these games mean that you can change the ending of the game, change the people who are with you in the game, give you bonus to extra characters or take away characters from you. And I just thought Mass Effect had that really, really spot on. More so in the second one, but the first one just as good.
Fair play. Again, storyline, just a recurring theme for all RPG games. Seems that's what makes it good. Right, I've gone through this. We'll touch on these a bit because I haven't played them too much myself. Far Cry. Anyone played that recently, RPG-wise? Because I personally thought Far Cry was more of just like an FPS with not too much detailed story behind it. Anyone actually played it a lot more?
I played Far Cry Primal when that came out, and I was really impressed with that game because it was kind of RPG, kind of survival, really, really good crafting as you'd expect from a Far Cry game. Really good side quests where you could go and get a mammoth instead of a horse. So if you didn't want to trot around on a horse the whole game, there's a legendary mammoth that you could spend like literally 2 hours trying to find and capture and tame it.
2 hours? Is that how long it took you?
Honestly, it was in the far north of the map. You had to track it down. You had to track it down into like this pit, and then in this massive pit, you had to like 1v1 it, and it was really, really difficult. But you could do the same with a saber-toothed tiger, or you could do the same with like a special type of bird that you could train so that it would then spot enemies for you. So Far Cry Primal, I want to play it again, actually, come to think of it. It was really, really impressive. And good crafting, good customization for your character was one of the sort of sticking points for me.
Nice. Young, you touched Far Cry series at all?
No. My brother played a lot of Far Cry, which was the one with the crazy guy on the front who was holding his hand up. 4, was that?
4.
Or 3, maybe, yeah. One of them two. My brother played them, and he seems to really enjoy them, but personally, I've not even touched them.
Same. What about Fallout? Anyone played any of the Fallout series?
Yeah.
I never touched. Give us a brief overview of what the Fallout series is like. Cause I've never actually touched it.
Young, do you want to answer that one, or shall I?
Well, it's like it's all the Fallout games are based in a post-nuclear apocalyptic world because the nuclear war started and everyone got put into vaults. And each vault was supposed to have a specialty and things, but the people going in don't realise that the governments have kind of like they're also testing chambers basically each one. So there's hundreds of vaults. I can't remember how many hundreds of vaults, but they all start once you come out of the vault. Basically, that's how your game always starts. Like you exit the vault and you just kind of go off on your way. And I only played the original Fallout 3. I haven't played many of the ones. I really, really wanted to get Fallout 4, but never did because when I saw the reviews, I wasn't like in the mood with them, and I just thought, I never got 3. And what really wound me up, I'll let Luke talk about this because I probably played it a lot more. I got to the end of Fallout 3, and they actually if you do the last quest, you can't go and finish any side quest. Like the game just ends.
Ooh, honestly,
it just goes like because of what happens in the story, they just go well, the game's ended. And I was like, well, I didn't know that was going to happen. You bullshit! Like you can't do that to me. But then if you bought the DLC, your game would continue.
Oh, I don't know how I feel about that. Snakes.
Fallout to me, obviously, it's made by the same company, but Fallout is the sci-fi version of Oblivion, of Skyrim, of Elder Scrolls.
Okay.
It's easiest way to put it. I think it's very, very open world with certain hubs of activity. So you can go to Megatown, which is literally a town that is built up around an atomic bomb that hasn't blown up. And spoiler alert, you can choose to be good or evil. At one point when you leave that town, you can potentially blow it up and get a load of fucking money or caps, bottle caps, which is their version of money. So those games are really good in the same way that the Elder Scroll games are, in that you can go and join the certain guilds as well. So you can join people who go and hunt down mutants, or you could just go trot around on your own, and then all of a sudden you come up against a super mutant, same as the mammoths and the trolls that we touched on in Skyrim, and you will just get bitch slapped out of the map. And it's great fun because it kind of reminds you that don't take the piss. Kind of do try and follow the storyline, because you do need to level up and get stronger. You can't just go and walk in the hardest place ever and survive. But yeah, pet hate of mine is definitely side quests when you finish the game, and even when you progress through a game, certain things happen where you might kill off an NPC, or something may happen and you can't finish a side quest, and that's a real bugbear when it's just sitting there in your quest book and it's got this is unfinished. I'm just thinking I need to finish it, and you know, I've certainly gone back in the past and reloaded and lost like 2-3 hours gameplay just to go back and finish a quest, which I know I've bugged because of one reason or another. So, but Fallout's fantastic. Yeah, really fun game.
The only thing I ever know about Fallout, I think I've read something before, is can you find some like alien capture with like an alien gun in, and you've only got like a certain limited amount of ammo for it?
Yeah, you can find a crashed UFO.
And it's meant to be like insane, but like I think I've read something like it says like hold this gun because you'll need it later on. And I think it's like the last mission. It's like, right, remember that gun you held? This is where, because it just one shots like anything apparently. Yeah, that's all I know about Fallout.
Yeah, you've got like these big, bulky, armored dudes coming at you with miniguns, like one minigun each, and you're just like, okay, well this like pea shooter ain't gonna do anything, so I need my ray gun. It's a good, challenging game in the same light that Elder Scrolls is. It puts you in your place at the right times, I think, and it's got really good side quests. And again, storyline is pretty fun. I think. I don't know what you thought, Young. In Fallout 3, you go on like a deserted aircraft carrier, and you got to go into the underground, and you're in a nuclear city. I thought it was pretty fun.
I did enjoy it until the end. It's just that annoyed me because I was one of those people who went, oh, do you know what? I'll just finish the main quest off and I'll finish those side quest off afterwards. So when it did that, I'm not like you. If I've played for 3 hours, I'm like, I'd rather not put any more time into it out of principle that you've done me over there. That you've literally got to the end and gone, you can't play anymore. Like, no, you're done. I'm not buying expansion. I'm not doing anything else.
I feel like mentioning Fallout, Young's just like reminiscent to a time now. Now he's really pissed off for the rest of the episode. Just like, bloody hell.
It really did. I wanted to like Fallout a lot. I really wanted to like Fallout, but they just did me dirty. So.
Fair play. On to the next one. I never played this one, but I know a lot of my friends did. BioShock. Anyone touch BioShock series at all?
Yeah, I played it a little bit. I remember it was quite difficult. It was really interesting, and the characters seemed scary, like that giant Nautilus-looking dude with a drill on his arm. He had these little girls that he would protect, like a little baby girl who had this big syringe of like radioactive stuff. It was good, but I never quite stuck with it. It was one of those games that I tried to play through and got halfway, and then something else would happen, and I forgot about it. But from what I remember, really good fun, just a little bit difficult, and maybe the storyline wasn't strong enough for me to stay with it.
Fair enough.
The first BioShock I absolutely loved, and I actually thought the story was incredible because in the first one, like it's one of those stories where when you get to the end, they reveal a load of stuff that you hadn't even noticed has been going on throughout the string. So all these mundane things, I kind of know what you mean, where you think like, oh, well, this is pretty paint by numbers. Then you get to like a certain point in the story. Well, I mean, I can just say what happens. But
do you mind picking up this wrench?
Yeah, and then basically, you work out that you've been under mind control the entire time, and every single time he said, "Would you kindly?" before all of these things he's asked you to do, and you've just thought like, well, this is just like a friend, that's why. And it's like, no, that's a trigger word, and you do whatever he says afterwards, and it's just like. When it happens, you're like, what on earth? I've just spent all these hours playing this game and I'm working for the bad guy and he's just flipped it on me. Yeah. And I just loved that. But then for whatever reason, BioShock 2, I just couldn't get into. I think because I quite enjoyed BioShock 3, which was the Infinite, the one where like you're in the sky. And I think the issue for me with Bioshock 2 was that they didn't change the setting, like it was back to Atlantis, and I was a bit like, I don't.
Lazy.
I've kind of done this already. Yeah. I think I'm not sure. Like I never actually played the. I've literally played like the first hour of the game, so I don't know how the story was. Maybe it got good, but it was one of those things where I just switched off mentally straight away because I was like, back again, like nothing different, sort of thing.
Fair play, fair play. Still got so many games to get through, so we'll keep plugging through. Red Dead Redemption. Anyone remember when that was kind of being talked about and released? I remember getting Red Dead. Pretty decent. I think what I like about Red Dead was, I think it was the second one or the first one, I'm not too sure. I think when you mentioned about Fallout at the end of the game, it kind of just like finishes. Was it Red Dead the one where like it finishes and you're like, your main character gets absolutely obliterated, but then you can finish the rest of the game, can't you, as like a different character related to him, which is kind of cool. So yeah, I kind of like that idea. That's kind of like...
random character related to him.
Yeah, I like that.
His cousin or something?
Oh, was it? So yeah, Red Dead was pretty good. In this kind of company, then Grand Theft Auto. Do you know what? I've never touched any I've never actually bought a Grand Theft Auto game before.
Oh,
I never have.
Goodness.
I've only ever played it at friends' houses.
I remember when I was in year 9, I took the morning off of school, lied to my teacher, said I had a doctor's appointment, and I went from my house on my own. Given I was 13 at the time, I took an hour train ride to Ipswich, bought the game, or tried to buy the game. It was obviously an 18, so I couldn't. Told some guy I'd give him a £5 if he bought me the game. He said, "Don't worry about the £5, I'll buy it for you," because he was clearly a fan of the franchise. Bought me the game. I came back to school in the middle of like a PE lesson, which is obviously like one of the most loud and full of like alphas and guys, one of those great PE lessons. And they were like, "Oh, Luke, why are you late? Were you at your dentist appointment?" And little did I know, all the guys had clearly said to the teacher that I was off buying GTA. And the teacher goes, you wouldn't happen to have a game in your bag by any chance, would you? And I was like, "Yes, got it!" And they were all like, "Fuck, I've got to wait till the weekend when my mum gets it from Tesco's." And I was like, "Yeah, suck it. I'm going to play it tonight."
Oh, I love that story. It's quality. Oh, God. So why does everyone love GTA? Like, is it just because it's like realistic that you can relate to it, yet it's something that you would just, well, I hope no one would ever do in real life. No, but I'm thinking in terms of like, it's nothing like Mass Effect or Final Fantasy, but it's really it's closer to what we know.
It's realistic in the sense of like when you're driving and you're using guns, and it's like it's based in the real world. But yeah, I think what people find interesting, I guess, is that it's in a real world setting, but it's like completely overblown, crazy, stupid sort of thing. Like all the storylines are just mental, especially even in the last one. You know, it takes them years to do because they just do these huge set pieces in the game, and there's like these missions where like you're robbing, like doing huge heists and stuff like that. Like it's like a movie kind of thing. But yeah, you're right, because it's with people and then you don't have like superpowers. It does become, I think it does make people like think it's quite interesting. And then also, obviously, it's just the fact that you can just do all these things that you wouldn't like be able to do in real life. Like you can just drive around, get 6 stars, and like run away from the army, like have sex with a prostitute, kill her, get your money back.
Everyone did the old refund trick.
Yeah, I know. Everyone was like, "Oh, what is mad about that is it's virtual money in a game that like means nothing, and yet people still told like we're like, by the way, if you want to save a bit of money, like it's not real, yeah, but if you do, you can just kill her afterwards. I mean, I'm just saying, you can do it. It's like, okay.
Oh, God. I think the storyline in San Andreas is pretty good, though, because obviously a bit spoilers, but at the end, like, you realise the two, like, the main people in your crew are, like, in the police, aren't they? And you gotta go and, like, kill them, which is pretty cool. Just bearing in mind you've, like, spent, like, the entire game.
Jordan is dead.
Oh, God, awful.
No, well, I mean, all the stories in Grand Theft Auto are always really good, in fairness. Well, since they've started doing them like that, have been really good. I think that's one of the things why they take so much time on them. But
yeah, I think those games are just it's such its own genre of game. Like GTA, there's nothing. Yes, people have made like games that have been sort of trying to be GTA, but the stories, the way that people speak, the characters. I mean, the characters in the most recent one, you get really attached to them. You know, I think at the end of it, you've got to choose which one of the three to get rid of, and it's like, shit, that's a tough decision because I like all three of you for different reasons. And yeah, the fact that you can just go out and do whatever you want, steal a car, stick some C4 on it, drive it into a police station, blow it up, walk away. You got 5 stars. Police are coming down the road, and you're like, do you know what? Let's have it. Let's see how long I can go for. So it's just, yeah, GTAs are fantastic. You can't. One of the things I loved about San Andreas, like I said earlier, was the gang wars. When you could start like controlling parts of the map with your gang, I loved that section because that's exactly what I'd do if I was in that guy's position. I'd go out and take over the world. It reminds me of like the Scarface game. Another one worthy of the shout.
Oh god, I can say like no other company can make a game like Grand Theft Auto because you just got too much of a gain on what that game is. I think Saints Row tried to, but they just had to make it more goofy, so it was a bit different. Otherwise, it just wouldn't get the same. Yeah, true.
But yeah, they were the first game. You're right. They did realise like there's just no point in trying to compete with it. Like we can do open world and just make it ludicrous. Like you're the devil, you're an angel, you stuff like this.
Mental, God. So which we haven't actually spoken about at all over an hour on this episode, which people are probably going mental at, is Zelda. We haven't ever touched on Zelda as an RPG. Now, personally, growing up as a PS2. Never touched PS3, but onto Xbox 360. Like, I've never had the opportunity to play a Zelda game. I had the Ocarina of Time when I had a 64, but I just played Star Fox instead. I never played it. Have you guys ever touched any Zelda games?
Not a wave.
Fair play, that's a no. Luke?
I do on Switch now, but...
I touched on a little bit of Zelda when I was younger, but I was too young at the time to really appreciate it. I know that it has got like quite a cult following. One of my friends around here, he's just bought the remastered one and he's absolutely in love with it. Hasn't put it down on his Switch for months. So I would be keen to try it because it's not my typical RPG. It's a bit more, I don't want to say childish because it's certainly not, but it comes across as a bit more childish is really the only word I can think of because of just the play style. I don't think that should undercut the RPG-ness of it because I think actually in its own right it is a fantastic RPG game. But it's certainly not a GTA. It's not as graphic. It's not an Oblivion. It's not so much of a fantasy world. It's a bit more user-friendly. And I think that's maybe just because of the type of console it's on. Because it's on the Nintendo consoles, they typically go for that sort of style of play.
Very true, yeah. I think as well, I don't know, I haven't played them, so this could be wrong, but I always think a lot of them advertised or, again, you're always the same character, the storylines seem pretty simple, the main bad guy seems pretty much the same each time, the combat system, and I guess people, if you like those if you like Zelda, you want to play Link the whole time, obviously, but it seems a bit samey to me. They've kind of tried to make it a bit different each time, but it kind of just falls into that kind of place. And it's, again, because it seems that kind of childish, it kind of seems like the storyline is just going to be, you work out who the bad guy is, you do him over, and then you win, and the whole kingdom's now great again. But there's never that kind of like Mass Effect part at the end where you've got to like, do I save Ashley or do I save the other guy? And as you believe,
the other guy.
Exactly. No,
if you want to know who George saved, do I save Ashley or whatever he was called? The dead
guy. Yeah.
Well,
Ashley or the guy was dead.
You literally answered my thing. I was going to say, if you realise who I saved, well, that's who it is because I never saved that guy ever. It was an absolute. Oh yeah, no. He just complained the whole time.
Okay, George. He's getting in the way. Ashley, no.
He just got in the way.
You are sick.
Okay, vote then. Who did you save, Young?
I did one of each. I played the game.
No, I want to know the first playthrough. I want to know.
I think I saved Ashley. Because I'm not trying to hide it. I was trying to bang her. I found I could have romance with him. I was like, nailing that. Nailing that, definitely.
Luke,
I did read that you could nail him as well, but even in the game, I'm not homophobic, but I was just like, I feel a bit uncomfortable with all this. Sorry.
Oh god, it's just your parents walking. What are you doing? I don't know.
Exactly. It's one thing if they walk in and like virtually nailing a woman. It's another thing they come in and virtually bug her in a blood. It's like, come on, man! I can't be having that on the screen. I'm going to get a reputation.
That's two tough conversations in one.
Oh god. Luke, what about yourself? Who did you say first playthrough round?
First playthrough round, I actually killed Ashley because I didn't realise at the time that's what was.
So we're looking for a new host of the podcast. If you want to accept, just send an email to.
Yeah, no death threats, please. But having said that, because I accidentally killed her, it actually spurred me on to go and do a second playthrough and savor. And that's exactly what I was mentioning earlier, why I love those games, because I didn't want to finish with Caden in my team. The guy was a douche. I wanted Ashley. I wanted, like Young said, I wanted to bang this chick.
What did I say?
Liara and Tally weren't doing it for me, so it had to be here.
You've got to do a playthrough to bang each of them as well, just for the completing it. It's
Come
a
on.
flip game.
Oh,
All that 100%.
100%.
we need to move on. Wait, Mass Effect just seems to creep back into every conversation. Assassin's Creed. Anyone play the Assassin's Creed games? I played the first one when it came out, and I was like, wow, this is like something new and something really interesting. I really enjoyed it. But I never touched on any of the ones after that, and there's been so many. Any of you guys got a favourite out of the series?
God, I don't even know if the one I'm thinking of is my favourite, because they're all so samey. I think it's number 2 or 3, where they kind of got it down, like really down. I think they had it the combat really well, the story really well. But again, I think they kind of just got a bit samey towards the end of it. I mean, now they're doing like, I don't know, Vikings. They've done like a pirate one.
You said that intro for the Viking one though. That was a good intro.
They always the intros always look good, but they are.
It's the same game. At the end of the day, like you're going to be sat in a circle with 8 guys around you, and you have to do a certain combination of buttons to win. Then you go climb a wall, and then you do a dive into a bit of hay, and there's an eagle above you. Like it's the same game. It just changed the background.
We've actually got Sorry, we got Joey in the chat who says he's got to disagree with that one. Apparently, he doesn't think they're all so gamey. I mean, to be honest though, like they had Black Flag Pirates, they had Odyssey, the Greek one.
They've changed they
had a lot of different ones
as well. Like the new games have got a different combat system. It's not the same just parry combat system anymore. So they have changed the combat, but they are still very similar in the sense that that's all they've changed. They've changed it. It's like it's more of a like almost a Demon Souls kind of combat system where you go from side to side doing attacks and stuff. And then if you want to be an assassin, you've got to level up that skill tree. But I mean, it's the same kind of game. Like 2, 3, and 4. So Black Flag as well. I did like Black Flag because I liked customizing the ship and stuff. But they were when it was really great. Those 3 games was like a 3-game run where it was really good. But then the problem, they should have just never done this weird real life storyline. It should have just been like games for the ages.
Yeah,
that's what I think messed them up. Is that like they tried to do this extra storyline on the back end, and it just got to like the 4th game, and they were like, "What do we do now? Like, this doesn't make any sense."
And when they got Michael Fassbender involved in a movie, I was just like, "Nah, it's dead. It's dead."
Well, they must have paid him a lot of money to do that as well, though.
You don't
have you seen it?
I've never seen it. No. Well, I got to think like he's a good actor. They must have paid him a bit to do it. They must have thought it's going to go somewhere.
Yeah, they got money hungry. I'll be surprised if they turned much of a profit on that movie, because I think a lot of people went to. Well, they probably did, because a lot of people went to watch it, but I think everybody who watched it was probably a bit sour with how it turned out. It wasn't. Just stick to the game. The graphics on the games are so good, it almost passes as a movie. You don't need to go and throw a couple of $100 million at it to do it all over again.
I think my favourite part of the game when I only played the first one was just actually like doing the assassination on the main guy and then like doing the escaping after, like jumping on the roof, listen that way, hiding with like the monks when you walk around and like jumped into a bush here and that. That's probably my favourite part of doing it. I think with the first game it was a bit weird where like there'd be 3 Knight Templars on you and you just like, if you perfectly just played the parry roll, they'd never hit you. You just counter every single one. But I know the different games have got a bit better, but I like the new idea. I think they're kind of, even though maybe we don't like the new idea that they're being like, oh no, we'll go and do group mythology and then we'll go and do pirates or something. They're kind of, what else? Like, yeah, I can't remember actually. Yeah. And they do the Viking one.
Like they did Egypt before they did Greek. They did Egypt, Greek, then they've done the Viking one.
It's kind of like, what else can they do though? Like they have to visit those kind of places in order to continue the franchise. Otherwise, there's nothing else to do, is there? So they kind of have to. So
they'll probably have to go to Japan or something now because they've done Egyptian, Greek,
samurai.
Norse. They've done Egyptian, Greek, Norse. So it'll have to be like samurai. And
Japan again. There you go. We already. Let us know. Send us an email with an invoice in. There you go. Got your next game. Right. Let's go. We'll go about a few more. We'll leave that one till last. Luke, you specifically said when we were to talk about this episode, you want to talk about Stalker. Now, I've never played it. Young, have you heard about Stalker before?
I've already heard you're a Stalker, that's about it.
Yeah, Luke,
I've heard of the game.
Yeah, Gibbo is a stalker.
give us a rundown. Give us
I've never played it.
Stalker.
Give us a rundown.
Stalker. It's tough to. It's an RPG in the way it's played, but it is kind of FPS-y as well. But essentially, you are a kind of like a treasure hunter in Chernobyl. So you you operate in Pripyat, just outside of Chernobyl, which is the sort of city nearby. And you are in a group of people called Stalkers. And the Stalkers go into the zone, which is the radiated area of Chernobyl. And you go in there and try and get stuff like old weapons, or there's these things called anomalies, which is where the radiation's created like a stone, like a gem, which are worth money. And you go in and sell stuff and loot and come back out and sell it. But there's a really good storyline in there with you've got to get to the center of the zone because these radiation bursts keep coming out of the actual reactor. And it's a really fun game because, one, it's quite difficult. And I think that is always, I don't like being spoon-fed too much in my games. But two, like, there's loads of different crazy things. It's quite scary at times. You know, you're not just up against like the army who are trying to hold you out. You're up against these like radiated creatures, like zombie creatures, like boars that have an extra head or whatever it may be. And it's really open world, so you can go out and get really good guns, but all of your guns have got certain ammo, and so you're living on the amount of ammo you've got. And you could just find yourself, you know, my playthrough compared to your playthrough would be completely different because all of a sudden I might only have my 9mm pistol with ammo at a really hard part in the game. And I'll tell you the next day, I'll be like, oh, Gibbo, I can't get past this point because I've only got my pistol. And you'll be like, well, actually, I saved up all my AK-47 ammo, and actually I breezed it because I just went through and slaughtered everyone. I'm like, shit, you know, I should be a bit more conservative. And I kind of like that in a game where it's a bit more survival. So Stalker, definitely a good one. And there's an expansion, also not an expansion, but a second game as well that's equally as good. And certainly a good one for storyline. I like it just because it's Chernobyl, because it's a bit more realistic. It's kind of somewhere that no one really knows much about. Probably know a bit more now, but certainly when I was a kid younger, I was like, oh, that, you know, could kind of even be real. So yeah, definitely worth a mention.
Play. Sorry, excuse me. Play. Nice. Right. So last two I've left because there's quite a big topic on them, especially with the most recent one. I'd say Dark Souls. We touched on it before. Why was Dark Souls such a massive thing a few years ago? Why was it so big? Come on, guys, jump.
Tell me. I've not played it, so over to you.
I think. I mean, I didn't even like it when I got it on my PS3. And everyone was like, "Oh my god, it's so good!" And I played it, and I was like, "This isn't fun. Like, it's
there's hard, and then there's too hard.
Yeah, it's just difficulty to make that your selling point. Like, how can everybody love this game? Because its selling point is it's difficult. Like, it's not fun difficult. I personally didn't find it fun difficult, and I wouldn't consider myself someone who just like expects the game to be fed to them. But it was like you'd roll slowly, and then like, you know, you'd be against these huge. It was just like you get hit with 2 shots and it's gone, and you just think like the game was meant to be played where you would literally die and go again. Like, that was the point of it. You'd learn different bits, but there's points where like even if you dodge the enemies and fought properly, then you get to a point there'd be a trap, and you just fall down the trap, wipe, and you've got to start from the start again. I'd just be like, what is this game? Yeah, I personally never really got into the Dark Souls games. I played the first one and tried to, and thought maybe I played it a few times, thinking, you know what, everyone loves this. It must be something to do with me. Let me give it another go. And yeah, I felt like it was kind of forced difficulty. But I think it goes to what we said earlier about RPGs, where there are a section of people who love RPGs, but really they just want a hard, like, they don't find these games difficult enough. Maybe they really like a difficult game. So when something like this comes out, they flock to it and they go like, oh my god, this is a 9 out of 10, a 10 out of 10 kind of game, because it gives me the difficulty I want answered as an RPG.
Fair play. I think that's probably why it was so popular, just the difficulty of it. I think, me especially, I think I've got mine on the Switch, and I played it, just the intro mission, and even that, it's just like, it puts you against some absolute massive person at the start, and I'm just like, I ain't killing this person. I think I died like 5 times within the first half an hour of playing the game. It's insanely hard. It's just like, and unless you've got that real determination and grit to be like, do you know what, I'm going to do this game, I'm going to get the best, I'm going to do this. It's just like, I don't know if I'm finding this amazingly fun at the moment. Again, I might pick it up later and give it another go, but it is tough. And the last game on the list is something I know I tried to get Luke to play a bit, but he wants to keep his life, and yeah, understandable. And that is WoW, World of Warcraft. So I think it counts. Definitely a role playing game because if not, probably the epitome of it. Like you are one character if you started from the beginning and played as that person. Why is WoW such a big thing in I don't know the typical hard grinder RPG person? And Young, I think you've got a lot to say for this. Speaking, you've probably got the most experience on this game.
I think WoW's like it's weird because WoW's obviously not an RPG in the normal sense of an RPG. What like people would consider when they think of it, it's an MMORPG, which is just naturally a lot less focused to one person. But I think what made WoW such a big hit is because it's just like, especially to early on, maybe it's lost a bit of this now as the game's gotten older. But it was so much about like joining with other people to defeat something. You literally couldn't complete the hardest content in the game unless you played with people. So you had to play with people. So that forces you to go out and socialize with people. And then because you know you've got to socialize with people, and you can't just be a dick to everyone because you need other people in order to get the best experience out of the game. It just encourages more like cooperation. And I think it's one of those games that just it really captured people's minds of like, oh my god, this is so fun to just get in a group guild of 100 people and we're doing 40-man raids, 25-man raids, like going in there with all these people at once to take this thing down. And that's at the end of the day, it's not very many games you can say you get 25 people together to take a bit of the game down. Like that's just even in most games that doesn't happen. It is obviously just in MMOs. So I think to be the first one to really do that and take off in that, we're not the first ever MMO, but the first one that really I think got kind of mainstream popular. I think it just captures people's minds, and I haven't played it that much this week, but I still like playing WoW. I'm waiting the kind of new patch I'm waiting for now at the moment. But as the game's gone on, they've had to change things and try and move things around. MMOs are always going to be different to normal RPGs because it's more is expected to change. If you release Mass Effect and people say, okay, I don't like the ending, okay, eventually they did with Mass Effect 3, release like an edited endings pack or something like that. But they didn't have to do that. In general, people would have just accepted it. But with an MMO, because it's constantly updating, constantly changing, they do a lot of hot fixes. I think that's the other thing with a game like that. You feel invested in it because it's constantly changing. It doesn't just stay the same the whole way through. You can buy an expansion and the game can be one way at the start and one other way at the end. And I do think that keeps people both ways. It's a bit of a double-edged sword where sometimes it will cut people out of the game. People go, do you know what? I hate that change. I'm not playing this game now. And other people will go, oh my god, I love this. I won't stop playing. So.
Fair enough, yeah. I like playing WoW. I think I kind of like it on the new expansion. Everything's brand new again. It's different. But I also think the game's so good in a way that it's so different before you hit endgame content. When you start from the get-go and level up, it's so new, it's so fresh. When you do a dungeon for the first time, you're like, whoa, this is pretty good actually like working together. It's like a small group of 5. And then when you hit endgame, it's like the game's just brand new again. There's so many more things to learn, even more than you did before. And then, I just think that I can see why it's the replayability is there. Like, obviously, people play it all the time. And I think, as you mentioned, probably not as much now, I think, with how much, it's much easier to find other players to play with. But before, when it was we need to do a 40-man raid, do I know 40 people that can play this, that plays the one game? 2 is on the same server. 3 is a specific class that we need to be. 4 needs to probably be in comms and knows what to do. That's a big thing to find in one game. So being a community to find that kind of group to play, or a lot of players in to play that kind of game. So I can see why it's still good now. So nice. And Luke, well done for probably not starting. You would have lost your life, but you never know. There's always time.
Yeah, I think I definitely would. It's a type of game that I think it could easily swallow you. And I think that's a good and a bad thing. For me personally, when I play an RPG, I'm the type of person that likes to know that I've completed it. And I've figured out all the endings, I've done the side quests, and I don't want to leave any stone unturned.
Oh dear.
With like an MMORPG, it's too big, and I'll never get that sense of I've completed it. Or if I did, it would cost me 500 hours. And that's why I'm staying away from it, because I know as soon as I open that book, as soon as I start that software up, I'm going to want to complete it, and I'll get hooked until I do complete it. And I just don't want to afford that amount of time out of my life right now to go through and do it. So I have my reservations about them games. I do think that they are maybe detrimental to the RPGs of the world. I think most RPGs are now moving into MMORPGs. I don't know if that's because of the way that you pay for an MMORPG compared to just an initial upfront payment with an RPG. But I do think RPGs are becoming less and less popular, and potentially, this is a reason or part of the reason why people are playing less RPGs, or companies are making less RPGs, because you just don't see the same level of good ones out there anymore. Whether that's because it's a saturated market and people don't have the right ideas, or the investment's not there, I'm not sure. But again, I kind of want to point the finger towards MMOs.
I think it's different. I think the reason why this probably is not as much is just there's so many different things happening with games now. For example, Battle Royale, that's taken a huge amount of player base from gaming to somewhere else. You've got things like Minecraft, which has just grabbed even more players, like crafting. The Valheim game that's come out, that's grabbed loads of players. League of Legends with like MOBAs, that's grabbed loads of players from somewhere else. So like that's probably why these maybe smaller games that kind of like maybe had a good foot in a while, that had a few players, just don't have it anymore. The big brands probably have just kept theirs because of their reputation. So there's just not a lot of room at the moment because the gaming industry is just getting bigger and bigger, especially over lockdown as well.
Yeah, I mean, all of those games that you've mentioned, and again, especially over lockdown, because it's worth considering this, they're all playing with other people. Warzone, Fortnite, you're playing with your friends. WoW, you're playing with your friends. Minecraft, you can play with your friends. RPGs are really, really one-person centric. It's you on your own, putting in a 4-hour grind, and you've done these amount of side quests, and you've not really got anything to show for it at the back end. You're not going to go and show off your new gear to someone else in an MMORPG because you can't. It's not like Warzone where you can show that you're a certain rank. It's all centered on one person, you just sitting down and playing it. And I think that is leaving the gaming world to a certain extent. It's like hot seats. You don't have as many 2-player games anymore. They want people to have their own console in their own house, playing over the internet. Those two types of games, I think they are becoming less and less popular. And I don't know if it's a good thing, because I definitely think there's a market for it, but maybe the gaming industry doesn't, which is a little bit sad, but I don't blame them. They're money focused. So
yeah, everyone's online nowadays, aren't they? Everyone wants to play with each other. Understandable. Didn't see it like that. It's good point. Right, we've got through every RPG that we've had on our list. Does anyone have anything else that they wanted to mention from a certain game, or is anyone left in the chat? We've got people left. If we've got any games we haven't mentioned. Young, anything we haven't said yet? Or Luke? Oh, Luke, not KOTOR again. We've mentioned that. Carry on.
It's not KOTOR. It's not KOTOR, right? I mean, while you brought it up, we haven't actually talked about it today, and it is an RPG.
Okay.
A couple of RPGs that just came to me there that I've played, what I thought were really good: Dragon's Dogma and Dragon's Age. I thought those games were fantastic. Dragon's Dogma, one of the best replayable games ever, because Young, and you'll like this, I don't know if you've ever played this game, you go through the game, you complete it, and when you complete it, you start the game again, but as your same character, and all of a sudden the game is like 10 times harder. You play it in like I don't know what it is, like a dark parallel universe where everything, instead of it being like the first thing you come across is a mouse, it's now like a 2-headed fucking Scorpicore thing that would have been the hardest thing in the game previously.
This escalated quickly.
It's super difficult, and I really like that, because it was like, actually, I've now got my person to the highest level. I've got all the skills I want, but I've not got anything to do to use them on. I want to use these abilities on something difficult, and I can't because I've just completed the game. And it gives you that chance to run through the game again with all the stuff like maxed out, and you're like, actually, yeah, now I can go out and kick some ass. And it was really nice. And it was the same with Dragon's Age. They got really good spells, really good fighting mechanics. I thought those two franchises were definitely worth a shout if you like your sort of Elder Scrolls style games.
Nice, good stuff. I think I had Dragon's Dogma actually on, I think, Xbox 360. I thought I think I just messed up the mechanics at the start for 2 hours. Didn't like it and returned it. Never played it. Probably missed out on the big one then, to be honest. Not good.
But I played both Dragon Age, but I mean, I got Dragon Age Inquisition the same time I got The Witcher. So it was one of those ones where, like, I just fell in love with The Witcher and was kind of just like, Dragon Age Inquisition's like, it's alright, whatever. It's fine.
Oh, you reminded me actually, Luke. Speaking then, again, we haven't mentioned. Anyone here played any of the Fable series?
Yeah.
Ooh,
Yeah.
Fable 3. Yes, now that is a great game. I think that game, I like the idea. It's quite cartoony in a way that when you play around and the abilities and such. There's not that much side quest, I'd say. It is very linear based, the main storyline, one path you take. I think I like, there's little cool lectures like having the dog with you, and then at the end.
Sold. Where's the download button?
But I love in that game, it's got some real hard choices in there, in terms of at the end, when you to try and kill the guy, you got to try and choose how to kill him. And then, especially spoilers, he kills the dog. And then you come back to life on the beach, and you've got this is the worst thing. You've got 3 choices, and choice 1 is like you get £1 million. Choice 2 is like you revive everyone in the city and they love you, but like if you didn't the first one is if you get £1 million, everyone hates you still because you haven't brought them back alive and your dog's dead. Second one is you bring half the population back that has been killed by the enemy, and then everyone loves you, but you've got no money and your dog's dead. Or the last one, you have no money, the whole city absolutely hates you, but your dog comes back to life.
Option 3 then, right? Am I right?
And the best part about option 3, you take option 3, and then you wake up on this beach, and your dog just comes running over from the beach. Oh, it's great. You walk into town, everyone's spitting on you, but your dog's there with you. It's great.
You do have to do good and evil throughout the game as well. Like if you're evil, you get. I don't know, well, maybe they didn't have it in the third one, but if you were evil in the second and the first game, you grow horns, and if you were good, you'd get like a halo. If you were good enough, if you did only good choices, you would eventually gain a halo.
Oh, I don't think it was in the third one. I can't remember. I remember in the third one, when you finish the game, you become king of the city, and you kind of have to make choices. And there was choices about if you gain money but less popularity with the public. And one of them was we need to build this orphanage for the people, and it was minus £500,000, but you get 10 happiness. I'm like, oh, okay, that's good. And then the bad option was we need to build a brothel. We'll make £1 million, but we'll get minus 20 loyalty. I'm like, brothel it is, great idea. Get that up.
In Fable 3, that was George. It says here in Fable 3, if you were good, you get white pristine rings. If you were bad, you'd get ragged black wings. If you were neutral, you got eagle wings.
Oh,
And you got bigger wings. They just depending on the size, how many followers you have.
Oh well, I can't remember that. I just remember the dog part. I knew that. I just linked to Luke. Yeah, God, fair play. Well, I think we've finally come across all the different RPG games. No one's got any more to put forward. This is your time now. Or forever hold your peace. Good stuff. Right then. So, right, that's another genre done and dusted. Thank you very much. Right then, on to film review. Do we want it? Oh, sorry.
Hold on. We can't finish the genre without knowing everybody's all-time favourite RPG. So,
okay, it can't be franchise either. Has to be game.
It has to be a game. It can't be Mass Effect. It can be Mass Effect 1 or Mass Effect 2. So I'm going to throw it out there, and I'll give you a second to think about it, but I need to know before the end of this. Maybe we can touch on the movie first to give you some time to think about it.
Okay.
Mine is Witcher 3.
No, don't give it away yet, young. God, no one's going to stress the podcast now. Oh, God.
Oh, that's a shame.
Just lost half our viewers because of that. They're all turned off now, young.
Oh, goodness. Film we mentioned last week to watch is Starship Troopers, the OG, the original Johnny Rico, first one. Luke, give us your short synopsis, not the whole thing.
Such a good movie. A movie was made at a time where action and comedy were perfectly merged into the same. It's kind of cheesy, but it's not really that cheesy.
It is cheesy.
That movie. Do you think it's cheesy?
I think it's cheesy. Yeah, definitely cheesy, but a good way. You accept the cheese and you carry on.
Yeah, it's cheesy in a fantastic way, and I think considering that it wasn't something that I'd heard masses about, I think the actual look and feel of the movie. I mean, I watched it today. It still holds up to today's standards in terms of gore and special effects and all of that. I mean, I've seen movies that are released in 2021 that look worse than Starship Troopers in 1987. 97, I think it is. It comes out.
Oh,
97.
goodness me. I have to look at this up again. But I think one of the things that... Oh, I forgot I was going to mention it now. What was I going to say? It's one of these films that...
You said? Running through my head.
Say again, sorry?
Said all the things you said, running through my head.
Oh, goodness me. It'd be one of these films, if it came out today, it'd be straight on DVD and it'd be like £5 from Poundland or something. That's where it would be. That's where it would be.
If it came out today, it would be #1 in the movies. It would be taking the world by storm. If you look at the quality of a movie today and you compared it to Starship Troopers, I put all my money on it. It would outperform them.
Main thing.
Me, something like fucking Twilight versus Starship Troopers. Nah, no chance. Johnny Rico, he's going to go in there. He's going to get his Beretta. Bang.
Right. Main thing is the Earth's doing all right. Unfortunately, there's some big alien bugs trying to kill it, and there's a big meteorite coming, and we don't want the meteorite to happen. So, unfortunately, basically, you got to sign up for the military, do a bit of service, and then go to some planet, shoot some bugs, and hopefully the world turns out safe. That is what the hour-and-a-half film basically is. There's some great comedy in parts where Johnny Rico, my favourite part, signs up for the military. And his two best friends are like a pilot, one's like a scientist, they're doing some good jobs. And he's like, you know what, I'll just be frontline, we need those kind of people. Turns up to the desk, he's like, oh, what are you joining it for today? He's like, oh, joining it for frontline. Oh, frontline, it's what made me the man I am today. Shakes his hand, got a bionic arm, obviously been cut off. Come around to the chair, he's got no legs. So, great idea to go frontline there. Great part. Oh, Luke, favourite part of the film?
Oh, honestly, that is such a hard question. Favorite part of the film? The bit you mentioned is fantastic. I think for me, the favorite part of the film is when they're in the outpost, and they have a pretty much like a last man standing kind of moment, and the music. Every time I hear it, hairs stand on end. I end up standing on my bed or the couch, like jumping in the air, like yeah. Kill those bugs! It's that type of stuff that just gets you pumped. And that scene, I could watch it over and over and over again. It's the type of thing I'd put on a MP3 and just listen to it on repeat. I love that.
Would you like to know more? Of course we do. We would like to. Oh, great film. If you haven't watched it yet, go and watch it. Let us know what you think. Young, any comments on the film? Favourite bits?
When I read the Wikipedia before we came on, sounds interesting. There was no mention in the Wikipedia of the boob scene, which I previously mentioned, which upset me, to be honest with you. It did say that
there's a lot of good boob in it. There's a lot of good boob.
There's a cheeky splash here or there.
It just wasn't worth the rental fee for a little bit of tip. That was all.
Oh God.
I must say, actually, the Carmen, Rico's girlfriend in the movie, so the protagonist's main sort of female interest, is possibly the hottest woman I've ever seen in a movie. Like, her in that movie is absolutely smoking. And I'm gutted it's not her you see the side boob of. It's Dizzy, but I'll live with it. Dizzy's still pretty hot. But Young, you have to watch this movie. I think you'll love it.
And lo and behold, there's some more sequels after Young, so you can get gripped. Don't worry.
Oh, right.
Oh, right.
So much.
Now, even better news. Next film, it is myself to choose, and I didn't actually know what to choose until I remembered that someone mentioned this film. I think 2 episodes ago.
Oh, yeah. Know what he's going for.
I don't. This came back to when Netflix actually first came up, and I signed up, and I was like, you know what, try film, see what's up. Now there's this film on there, and there was just a big foot like trying to crush in a jeep. I was like, okay, this looks pretty cool. Started watching it. Okay, well, it's not in English, it's in Norwegian, that's okay.
Oh, God, it's this bloody Monster Hunter or whatever.
And it's Troll Hunter. Troll Hunter. In the detail of the animation, the lore behind the trolls, the secrecy with the government.
It's on Netflix.
Well, I don't think
you watch this next week. Anyway, let me just tell you everything about the film.
No, I'm just serving it up a bit, giving the star. It's I don't think it's on Netflix anymore, so you're gonna have to find it yourself, unfortunately. But it is worth finding. I'm telling you now, great film, great plot, great ending. You'll fall in love with the characters. It's incredible. You might learn a bit of Norwegian at the same time. Added bonus. So next week's film is Troll Hunter.
I'm happy with that. I've seen that movie before, but it's a timeless classic in our world. I think Netflix probably couldn't afford to keep it on there because it's such a big budget.
They asked for too much. You have to the views are in the millions, I think.
So it makes sense, but I'm more than happy to watch that movie.
Oh, incredible. Right then, is it still on Netflix, Young?
No, it's not. I'll find a way to watch it now.
Good stuff. Right then.
Obviously, we're not promoting any illegal sources here.
Not at all. But if you let me know, send me a link. Right. Thank you for listening, everyone. Thank you for watching. You can now find us on Spotify at Off the Top of My Head podcast. I've put all the recent episodes on there. I post stuff on Instagram to let us know when we're live, especially on my Twitch page as well, where we record our episodes. Apart from that, thanks for listening in. Young, thanks for joining us. Luke, thanks for joining us. Anything else you want to say before we go?
You need to tell me what your MVP is for RPGs.
Oh, mine personally, from a nostalgic point of view, would have to be Final Fantasy VII with Cloud. Definitely.
We've all gone for different choices here. I mean, mine's probably going to be pretty obvious. I mentioned it enough. It's taken up enough of this podcast already. But Oblivion came close. KOTOR came close. Mass Effect 2 took the title. It just my favorite RPG to go out and play. So you can lose people, you can gain people. There's a lot of customization. The story's your own every time you play it. Definitely recommend 100%.
Not bad. Good stuff. Young, are you still with us there? Oh, I think we got a bit of a date. Oh, he's gone. No worries. Right, we'll leave it just there. We'll ask him when he's back what his favourite RPG is. And apart from that, we've been Off the Top of My Head podcast. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. Peace.
Cheers.